On 5 News, the soldiers charged with murder. IRA man Joe McCann was shot dead in 1972. 2 former paratroopers who are now in their 60s are accused of killing him. Also, a prison out of control. A major operation is underway after hundreds of inmates take over a Birmingham jail. The evacuation of Aleppo grinds to a halt. 50,000 civilians remain trapped in the city as fighting threatens to break out again.
Let's start the draw.
A £2.5 million lottery fraud. Camelot is fined for wrongly paying out on the jackpot. And
You can't always get what you want.
the MPs challenging for the Christmas #1 spot. But the competition is pretty tough. Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbett. More than 4 decades after one of the IRA's most prominent members was shot dead, 2 former paratroopers have been charged with his murder. Joe McCann was fired at by a British Army patrol near his home in Belfast back in 1972. But the circumstances are highly disputed and a previous investigation was dropped. Now, though, the 2 men in their 60s are facing prosecution, leading one former soldier to call it a witch hunt. Dominic Reynolds has the story.
In the 44 years since his funeral, questions have lingered over exactly how Joe McCann died. Those questions are now set to be answered in a courtroom. 2 British former soldiers have been charged with his murder. Joe McCann was a well-known IRA member. He was shot dead in 1972 in Belfast, but the investigation which followed ended without a prosecution. Joe's son Fergal welcomed the news today, saying it was always our view that our daddy was executed. He was unarmed when he was shot, and the soldiers admitted that they knew him and knew him to be wanted. This was one of the first shoot-to-kill incidents, in our opinion. But reaching into the past to charge servicemen is controversial. Prosecutors are at the moment deciding whether or not to charge British soldiers over Bloody Sunday, where 13 civilians died. Some say soldiers should be safe from cases like this.
I'm afraid it's fundamentally wrong. These people have served and provided us with the security that we enjoy in a particularly difficult time in Northern Ireland's history. And I just cannot feel that this is right.
The 2 men who haven't been named are in their mid-60s today. They're likely to appear in court early next year. It will be an appearance that Joe McCann's family have waited over 40 years to see.
Dom, this is a very significant development at what is a pretty controversial time.
It is, because it was just last week that a former soldier described this process whereby former soldiers are prosecuted for decisions they made on the field of battle as a witch hunt. Now, that was in relation to the government's investigations over alleged abuses in Iraq. Today's development has come from a different body that was looking into more than 3,000 unsolved murders dating from the Troubles. And significantly, until now, no British soldier had faced a murder charge as a result, and some said that that was controversial. So what this all means is that this case, one way or another, will be watched very closely indeed.
Dom, many thanks. The ceasefire that allowed residents to be evacuated from the besieged city of Aleppo has been stopped after 24 hours. Buses and aid agencies were ordered to leave without notice. The Syrian government claims it's because opposition forces didn't keep their side of the deal. At least 6,000 people are thought to have left, but as many as 50,000 are still feared trapped. Frankie McCamley reports.
Arriving to safety, an emotional end to a bittersweet journey, leaving their homes and livelihoods behind in eastern Aleppo in the hope of a safer future. They killed us and shot at us, this woman says, with aeroplanes, and wounded us. They slaughtered us. We got out from below the rubble. A ceasefire deal earlier this week paved the way for tens of thousands of people to be evacuated from besieged districts of the city. But that has since broken down. The evacuation suspended.
Agreement doesn't seem to have been reached. There's been shooting, there's been violence, there have been additional roadblocks put in place to prevent evacuation of either area, which is very sad because Obviously, this was urgently needed.
During this news report, blasts were heard as buses tried to take people out of the city. Red Cross vehicles sent to rescue people forced to flee themselves. And here, vehicles carrying some of those being evacuated are turned back. It's thought around 6,000 people have managed to escape eastern Aleppo. Wounded, some are taken to hospitals in Turkey, many women and children, and a baby in a critical condition. But these are the lucky ones. Back in the city where thousands have been killed, areas flattened and food supplies cut off, it's a desperate wait for help for around 50,000 people still thought to be trapped by a war that is clearly far from over. Frankie McCamley, 5 News.
The chair of the inquiry into historical sex abuse says it will not be scaled back. Professor Alexis Jay says all 13 of its separate investigations will go ahead and that she expects to deliver a provisional report in 2018. Police have dropped their investigation into MP Keith Vaz. Allegations were made about the Labour politician in a newspaper, but the Metropolitan Police says after new information came to light, no one will face charges. And a Royal Marine serving life for the murder of an injured Taliban soldier will have to wait until next week to find out if he can walk free on bail. Supporters of Sergeant Al Blackman had hoped that judges would make their decision today, but they say they need more information from the prosecution. This afternoon, his wife was cheered as she left court. Next, a massive riot has broken out at a prison in Birmingham. As many as 400 inmates are involved in the disturbance, which is still ongoing. Let's get the latest now with Simon Viger. What's going on, Simon?
Well, it's been going on all day. It started at 9 this morning, Matt, and it's believed it started when a prison officer was rushed from behind and his keys were stolen. G4S, the private security company, runs this prison in Birmingham. It says the incident is low level. Let's take a look at the pictures from this afternoon. Police, of course, drafted in, and other officers from other prisons. 1,500 inmates are held at this prison. It used to be called Winson Green, and it's believed it's spread to 4 wings. The first report this morning was an officer being threatened with a used syringe, and that's when he was mugged. The riot squad from neighbouring prisons have now gone in. You can see from the pictures, obviously, they've got the riot shields and restraints there. And cell by cell, wing by wing, they're trying to close it down. This is what they did at Bedford a month ago. That riot there led to an unofficial strike by prison officers. They're complaining about understaffing, saying this sort of thing could happen at any prison. That's what they've been saying. The government says it is addressing understaffing, but tonight the Prison Officers Association says the whole system is in crisis.
Yes, it's just the latest trouble at a prison, isn't it, Simon? Thanks very much indeed. Now, did someone manage to con the organisers of the National Lottery and claim a £2.5 million jackpot with what was a dodgy ticket? That's the question being asked after Camelot was hit with a huge fine by the gambling regulator. It says that back in 2009, lottery bosses paid out to someone with a deliberately damaged ticket, but the incident has only recently come to light. Louise Beale investigates.
It's become a national institution. In fact, around 80% of us play the National Lottery every year. But now Camelot, who run it, has been fined £3 million after paying out a £2.5 million jackpot to someone with a deliberately damaged ticket. Camelot claim it will never happen again.
For people who play the lottery and for anyone watching this, can they trust you to run it properly?
Yeah, absolutely. The public can have trust in the National Lottery. This event was 7 years ago. On a balance of probabilities, it may have happened, but it couldn't happen today in any event, and it only relates to a damaged ticket claim.
Are you sorry?
Yeah, of course. We've said very clearly that some of the issues that happened in 2009 we've accepted. We're sorry for some of the control weaknesses that potentially are in place for this sort of fraudulent claim. But critically, it was a unique one-off situation. It couldn't happen today, and it doesn't relate to the rest of the National Lottery draws or operations at all.
Despite the reassurances, people I spoke to today were sceptical.
I'll just put me off for getting a lottery now.
Well, yeah.
I was about to get one.
Someone's on the fiddle, then.
Yeah,
that's
no
it.
good.
I don't trust the National Lottery, so there's no surprise really.
Hearing something like that, would it put you off playing?
I don't play.
It should be just should be checked and verified, and it should be correct.
40. The fraud happened in 2009, but only came to light last year. Labour say it stopped a 7-figure sum being donated to good causes at the time, and Camelot have many more questions to answer.
I think they need to do a lot more work to convince lottery users, and there are 30 million of us, I'm one of them, that they can play this game in a safe and secure way. I'm asking ministers to come back to the House of Commons on Monday to explain their role in this great lotto robbery, and I think Camelot have got to give the British public more information very quickly.
Police say they did investigate an allegation of fraud connected to the lottery back in 2009 and arrested a man, but he was released without charge. The government say it's right Camelot has been fined and are reassured it won't happen again. Louise Beale, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News.
A little bit peckish, and yet
We take a look at the wide range of talent battling the Christmas #1 spot. And how the pride of Wigan is just out of this world. Delicious. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back, you're watching 5 News. Now, there's a warning that hospitals in England are so full that patients' safety is being jeopardised. A report found that last winter only 5% of beds were free on any given day, increasing the risk of infection and meaning that hospitals might not be able to cope with a sudden influx. Our health correspondent Catherine Jones has now discovered that the problem was no better last week.
The health service has started winter under unprecedented strain, and today came a warning that our hospitals are already so full, patient safety is being put at risk. In winter, the average hospital trust in England has 640 beds available. But our analysis of the data reveals on the worst day so far, Wednesday, December the 7th, there were 28 hospital trusts operating with fewer than 6 free beds, including 9 trusts which had no free beds at all that day. Across that whole week, 94.6% of all hospital beds in England were occupied. And full wards means staff stretched to the limit, as Poppy Hasted experienced this time last year. She has multiple sclerosis and was admitted with pressure sores.
The nurses and doctors are just under so much pressure, so much stress with people coming in. They couldn't stop. They were running around all over the place. Bless them. It was like they hardly even had a chance to have a cup of tea or get their prescribed break.
Hospitals try their best to cope by opening extra beds. A new analysis by the Nuffield Trust has found last winter the number of beds brought into service each day was the equivalent of 5 whole hospitals opening. But when those beds also get filled, the risks escalate.
Hospitals can start to experience problems with infection control, so there's not enough time between patients to clean beds properly. It can be difficult to admit patients from A&E, for example, so people can end up on trolleys waiting in corridors. It's poor for staff, stressful for them to manage the situation, and in the end it's a poor patient experience.
Trusts have now been told to stop most scheduled operations for the next 4 weeks to cut their bed occupancy rates to 85%. The NHS says patients can also help take the pressure off by avoiding A&E if at all possible. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Now, he's only got a few weeks left in the job, but it seems that Barack Obama isn't going quietly. He's accused Russia of using cyber attacks to influence the presidential election won by Donald Trump. Mr. Obama says he's made Vladimir Putin well aware of his feelings, and he's vowed to take action. Russia, though, is having none of it. Chloe Potter reports.
This is what President Trump's victory looks like. Celebrating in Pennsylvania, a win unexpected by most and incomprehensible to many.
I just want to thank the incredible people of Pennsylvania, okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.
But last night, an accusation from the man he'll replace. Mr. Trump had the help of a Russian cyber attack.
When any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it.
The claim is Russia hacked the Democratic Party's emails, denting Mrs. Clinton's credibility and helping to sway the election in favour of the Republican candidate. But he's hit back, tweeting, "If Russia or some other entity was hacking, why did the White House wait so long to act? Why did they only complain after Hillary lost?" In fact, the Democrats claimed Russia were meddling in the campaign back in October, and during his campaign, Trump publicly invited Russia to hack into his rivals' emails.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
The relationship between Mr. Obama and Vladimir Putin has been frosty, to say the least. Their meetings have been persistently awkward. Experts say Obama should have dealt with Russia much sooner.
Well, he's certainly living late in the day. The previous 8 years of the Obama presidency, he has taken the path of least resistance. He has not wanted to deal with the festering problem of Russia. But now that he sees, finally, that it may possibly have measurably influenced an American election, he is threatening some form of retaliation.
It's not yet clear what action Obama will take, but what is certain is he'll have to act fast. Chloe Potter, 5 News.
We've got some breaking news now, and really bad news if you're planning to fly over Christmas. More than 1,500 check-in staff, baggage handlers and cargo crew are to go on strike for 48 hours next Friday. That's 2 days before Christmas. It'll affect 18 airports. It's come from the union Unite, and it's part of a long-running dispute about pay. We'll bring you the latest information and our updates throughout the evening here on Channel 5. The British man who wanted to become the first person to swim the Atlantic has had to give up. Ben Hooper set off from West Africa on the 13th of November in the hope of swimming 1,883 miles to Brazil. But his support vessel got badly damaged in a storm and he had to call it off after just 87 miles. You've heard of pie in the sky. Well, how about a pie in space? Yep, this is a meat and potato pie, to be precise, and it's been launched into the stratosphere by scientists in Wigan. They wanted to see whether sending it into space changes the pie's molecular structure. It landed safely in a field 3 hours later. Apparently, though, no one has been brave enough to give it a try. Very pretty pie all the same. The X Factor winner, a group of hospice workers, South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue and a member of One Direction. It is a pretty diverse range of people, but they're all after one thing, being Christmas #1. The battle is tighter than ever this year, and as Ruth Liptrot reports now, there is an especially poignant side to it too.
No, you can't always get what you want.
The murder of the MP Jo Cox was one of the year's most affecting and upsetting news stories. The aim of this single, featuring musicians and MPs, is to help us to remember her legacy rather than her death. All proceeds from You Can't Always Get What You Want will go towards the Jo Cox Foundation, which supports charities that she believed in.
That story really touched the public, and I think that's everything really about the record is because of her influence and the way that what happened to her touched the whole nation.
And they're getting pretty good at this music promo lark.
You can download it from iTunes.
Yes.
Are you? Yeah. You're quite that. You're getting quite good at being a rock star, aren't you? Change of career, perhaps.
One can live in hope.
Said his constituents.
Well, as long as his constituents are buying the single.
This place isn't somewhere that we normally associate with rock and roll, but the government have said that they'll waive the VAT on the single. And the Rolling Stones have said that they're prepared to waive the royalties so that all the money can go to charity.
Of course, they're going to have a bit of competition. The Christmas #1's as traditional an institution as the turkey on the table. It goes without saying that there's an X Factor winners single.
When the frost bites the snow and Christmas comes around.
And a single from a former X Factor contestant, Louis from One Direction.
Darling, just hold on.
And the London Hospices Choir even arranged a flash mob at Waterloo Station in their attempt to be #1.
Oh, wouldn't it be marvellous? And look what it would do for the hospices. I mean, look, I'm in one.
Oh, it'd be fantastic, wouldn't it, really? I mean, yeah, that's what everybody's fighting for.
So what do you need to do to get a Christmas chart topper these days?
There are various things you need to try and do to get a Christmas #1 these days. You need to mobilise your fan base. You need to use social media and make sure that everybody knows that you're really targeting for the Christmas #1. Those things are now more important than maybe some sleigh bells or some snow in your video.
I like sleigh bells. Don't you miss the sleigh bells?
Well, who doesn't like sleigh bells?
I think we need sleigh bells. That's better. Well, there's nothing Christmassy at all about this track, but we'll forgive them because his chip pan's on fire. He should have done his roasties in the oven. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Kind of a mixed bag. That's all from us for now, but join us in an hour for the last of our special programmes looking back at the year's biggest stories. And tonight we're looking at the impact of terror in Europe in 2016. A series of shocking attacks in Brussels and France killed hundreds and exposed big security weaknesses. And here, a new generation of armed anti-terror police were unveiled as a deterrent to potential attackers. We'll discuss all of that and more in 2016, Terror in Europe, a 5 News special. That's coming up at 6:30. But that's it from me and the team for now. Chris Page has your weekend weather next. I'll see you again in an hour. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.